and this is chapter 35, John the Baptist. Hello friends, welcome back to Storytime at Riverwood Cabin. I'm Rosie Boom, this is Epi, and we're reading to you from Where Lions Roar at Night, the first book in the Barn Chronicles. And this is chapter 35, John the Baptist. The next morning, as she came downstairs, she saw Mum standing on a chair and hanging up the Christmas Advent quilt. In all the dramas of the day before, she had completely forgotten that it was December. She bounded down the remaining stairs and gave Mum a gentle pinch. A pinch and a punch for the first of the month, and no returns. Mum laughed and then slapped her arm, a slap and a kick for being so quick. "I can't believe it's nearly Christmas," said Ellie, as she appeared in her dressing gown. "We'll have to make our Christmas chocolates today." Millie nodded and looked at the quilt that Mum had made a few years ago. It had 25 pockets in it, each with different motifs quilted on the top. There were shepherds and stars and sheep and camels. And in each pocket, Mum had written a card with a special verse from the Bible, which they read out before having the chocolate. They always put 1 fancy chocolate and 5 chocolate raisins in each pocket, and took turns reading the verse and having the best chocolate. Millie counted through the pockets and found out which ones would be hers. They always started from youngest to oldest, so she got day 3, 9, 15 and 21. Everyone, even Mum and Dad, got a fancy chocolate on Christmas Eve. "Now for the wreath," said Mum. Dad looked up from his breakfast. "Oh, it's the Christmas wreath again, is it? That was quick. Didn't you just take it down last month?" Mum pulled a face at him and continued out the door. Millie laughed. Dad was right. Mum loved the wreath on the door, and it often stayed there for months after Christmas. Dad winked at Millie and carried on with his breakfast while Mum hammered away outside. "That's that," she said in a satisfied tone when she came back inside. "I can't wait to have our first Christmas in the barn. It seems the right place to celebrate Christmas somehow." She sat down at the table and poured some cereal into a bowl. "Let's hurry up and finish breakfast, kids. We need to get out to the hen lady pretty soon." They drove down the long country road, looking at the numbers on the letterboxes. "There it is!" shouted Sam, pointing to a mysterious-looking drive with big wrought-iron gates and tall trees on either side. Millie leaned forward excitedly. They wound their way down the long drive and came out into a clearing where there were high fenced paddocks and chickens everywhere. "Well, we're certainly at the right place," said Mum. They climbed out of the car and met Linda, the hen lady, who took them down into the main paddock, where heaps of small chicken coops dotted the grass. All over the field, hens and roosters scratched and pecked. Suddenly, a small, white leghorn rooster ran towards them and climbed up onto Millie's feet. She laughed as he nestled down and looked up at her. "Look, boys," she called. They ran back to her and stared at the funny sight. "Ah," said Linda. "He likes you." "Why does he do that?" asked Sam. "Well, there's a bit of a story to this little fellow. When he was just a wee chicken, he was attacked by a rat and bitten around the head. I should have let him die, I suppose, but I couldn't bear to. So I nursed him back to health. Now he thinks he's half human." She picked him up and he nestled into her arms. Then she popped him onto the ground. "Watch this." The rooster stood up for a second and then began to spin his head round and round until it was upside down. He staggered around for a few seconds and then all of a sudden his head popped up the right way and he walked normally. The children stared in amazement. "He gets all muddled up," said Linda with a laugh, "and he doesn't know which way is up. But he seems to sort it out after a while. We think he's a bit brain damaged." She picked him up again and nestled him in the crook of her arm. He rolled his head around until he was staring at the children from upside down. "May I hold him?" asked Sam in a soft voice. "Of course." Linda laid the bird in Sam's arms. He carried him all the way around the field while Millie chose 7 hens. While Linda and Millie put the hens into 2 boxes, Sam came close to Mum and asked quietly, "Can we get this one, Mum, please?" Mum looked at his eager face and smiled. "Oh, darling, we don't want another rooster, and certainly not a brain-damaged one." "Please, Mummy, I'll look after him. He can be mine and Jake's, please." Linda looked up and smiled. "If you want to take him, he's yours for free." Sam looked up at Mum with big eyes. "Please." Mum closed her eyes for a moment and then gave a small nod. "All right, darling, but you'd better do the talking to Dad when we get home." Sam's face flushed with excitement. "Millie," he called, "I'm allowed to keep him for my very own." Millie looked up from the box and felt a stab of jealousy. She would have liked to have had him herself. Then she looked down at the 2 boxes of hens and smiled. "Good one, Sam," she called back. "He's a pretty cool bird." They walked back to the car, Sam holding his precious rooster, and Millie and Linda carrying the 2 boxes. "You'll have to think of a name for him, Sam," said Mum, as he climbed carefully into the car. "Oh, he has a name already," said Linda. "I called him John the Baptist, because one day he'll have to lose his head." Mum stared at her for a second and then burst out laughing. "John the Baptist! Wait till Chris hears that." She looked in the window at the strange bird lying contentedly in Sam's arms. "Well, he'll be loved all right, that's for sure. Thanks so much." Everyone was bursting with excitement on the way home. Everyone, that is, except Mum. "Good grief," she muttered to herself. "What have I done? Chris will just about die when we tell him we've brought home a brain-damaged rooster." Millie looked at Mum's worried face and grinned. She could just imagine what Dad would say. "Thanks, Mum," said Sam again for the 10th time. "I've never had my own rooster before." Mum smiled at him in the rear vision mirror. "I couldn't say no to him," she said to Millie, as if practising what she was going to say to Dad. "I just couldn't." Dad looked up from the vegetable garden and gave a wave when he saw them coming down the drive. Let him see the hens first," whispered Mum urgently. Millie climbed carefully out, holding one of the boxes. Dad took it from her and carried it into the hen house. Ellie followed with the other box. One by one, Millie lifted out the chickens. "I got 3 leghorns. They're supposed to be really good layers. And I got 2 Hamburg cross hens." Then she lifted out a plump hen with grey and white stripes all over it. "She's a funny-looking one," said Dad. "She's a Barred Plymouth Rock," recited Millie carefully. She'd been memorising the name all the way home. Dad raised his eyebrows. Very impressive. Just then he caught sight of Mum and Sam. He stood up. "And what have you got, Sam?" Sam's eyes flicked at Mum, and then he said in an excited voice, "I got one too. He's mine and Jake's." "He?" Dad looked questioningly at Mum. She ignored his look. He walked over to Sam, who still had John the Baptist in his arms. "Sure is friendly enough." "He is, Dad," burst out Jake excitedly. "He was hurt by a rat when he was a baby, and the lady took care of him, so he loves people. He's a bit brain damaged, though." Dad turned to look at Mum with an incredulous look on his face. She shrugged her shoulders. "You mean to say you bought a rooster?" spluttered Dad. "But not just any rooster, a retarded rooster? Unbelievable." "We didn't buy him, Daddy," Sam said proudly. "The lady gave him to us." "Why am I not surprised?" muttered Dad. "Watch this." Sam put the rooster on the ground. Straight away he began to spin around in a circle while his head spun around and around until it settled upside down. Dad stared at the display in disbelief. "Unbelievable," he said again. Jake jumped up and down beside him. "Guess what his name is?" "I could never guess in a million years," stated Dad flatly. "John the Baptist!" shouted Sam and Jake at the same time. Mum let out a laugh, then gave a little cough. "Because he's going to lose his head one day," explained Jake. A smile crept over Dad's face and into his eyes. "I'd say he's already lost it," said a voice behind them. Josiah was standing there with a grin on his face. Dad shook his head a couple more times and then let out a chuckle. "Well, you've got a really special rooster there, boys." Then he turned to Mum. "Remind me to never let you go buying hens again, Rose. Retarded roosters. Oh boy."